Cube Draft is one of Magic the Gathering's most beloved formats, due to its high power, replayability, and variety of themes. A cube can be based on anything, a set, a plane, a mechanic, or even just a feel or a theme. But how does one design a cube? Let's take a look as we step through the process of making my Multicolor Madness Cube. The idea behind the Multicolor Madness Cube is that everyone is playing at least a 3-color deck. A couple of 4 or 5 color decks are okay, but they shouldn't be the norm. People also shouldn't be playing mono or dual color decks ever. So we want to incentivize playing lots of colors, but not too many. To do this, we need to make strong 3-color archetypes for people to find their way into. To pick archetypes, we should first brainstorm a bunch of archetypes and slim it down to ones that work well together. As we can see here, I have thought of 3 archetypes for each color grouping. Some of these are a little loose, but looking at the enemy color pairings, we have a lot of tribal synergies we can use. Jeskai Wizards is a bit of a stretch, but we can doctor some cards to make the archetype fit. Since we already have 5 tribal identities, we can cross the tribal aspects off the ally color pairings, so we can have more cross-pollination between the archetypes. After that, we can look for the most prevalent archetypes we want to pursue and try to build the cube from there. For example, counters, sacrifice, and tokens are all long-existing themes that have a lot of cards that can fit into them. I don't like doing archetypes like artifacts here, since most of the best artifact cards are colorless and can get picked off by the other drafters. However, I went with artifacts because the other 2 archetypes have a lack of 3-color cards to put in the cube, while Alar's Esper Shard provides many colored artifacts to choose from. For Grixis, the spells archetype is more likely to lend itself to the multicolored theme, as all storm cards are monocolored. With the archetypes figured out, we should move on to the framework of the cube. A framework doesn't need to be set in stone, but it helps keep the color balance of the cube and show us targets to aim for. At some point, we might change the framework to be less rigid, but to start with, I like to put divisors of 5 and 10 as they're easy to remember. 3 colored cards are going to be the heart of this cube. Each 3-color card should slot well into its archetype, and about half of them should scream at you what you're supposed to be doing. Looking at the Bant combination, its theme is counters, so we can look through Scryfall to make a selection of cards that synergize well with counters and create counters. The real drivers of this archetype are going to be Broker's Ascendancy, Broker's Confluence, Falco's Spara, Pact Weaver, Janara, Usher of War, and Peri the Pulverizer. They are a good combination of counter payoff and counter placement, making them high-value cards for the counters deck, and importantly, not for other decks. Unfortunately, the good 3-color counter cards run out at those 5 cards, so from here we may need to stretch. One Bant removal spell may be a good add, but too many will make the combination of colors too powerful. Disciplined Duelist and Lagrella, the Magpie, at the very least make counters for later use. From here, we need to doctor some cards. The first edit is going to be Rigo, Streetwise Mentor. We will change its stipulation from a creature with power 1 or less to creatures with counters on them. This is a difficult moment because he is potentially a mono-white card, meaning he's open to being both too powerful and going in a lot of decks. We're banking on his heavy reliance on counters to keep him in his home. The last Bant card will be one of custom design. This is risky because custom cards tend to be very powerful. However, I have an idea for conspiracies that will help limit 5-color decks and power up 3-color ones. Here's a set of conspiracies designed to keep players within 3 colors. We have to be narrow and somewhat contradicting across these conspiracies, because we never want a player to be playing 2 or even 3 of them. This can lead to unhealthy gameplay and makes drafting about who can get the most custom cards. Moving on to other colors, to avoid reiterating points, we will quickly run down each group. Esper has a lot of on-theme cards already, so this pairing basically falls into place. The same is true for Grixis and Jund. Naya has a few less, but a grouping can be squeezed out of the limited pool of 60 cards. Mardu is the start of our problems. It has a lot of tribal cards, but only a couple of vampires. There's a pretty suave fix of changing the other tribe's abilities to work for vampires. Temir has a good core of elementals, but other than Omnath, they don't really scream tribal at you. That's okay, as we can turn them towards elementals with a line of text or 2. Abzan is a real bind. With only 25 cards, there aren't even really humans in the set we can gravitate towards. We just have to try our best and make and change humans to get our 10 cards out of this combination. Even the finished card pool has some weird inclusions. Jeskai is full of wizards, and the glue that holds them together is non-creature spells. This is good because we can work the non-creature angle and keep the wizards and spells theme closely knit. Sultai is a real mess. It probably shouldn't have elves as a theme if we're being honest, but you can't take them away from me, and Leovold is an elf. A bit of tinkering and type changing will keep it around, although we should keep an eye on the Sultai cards during playtest because it is almost all custom and edited cards. Let's move on to two-color cards. Every two-color grouping has 3 archetypes that fit under its banner. We want to maximize the number of cards that synergize with these archetypes. For Azorius, we have counters, artifacts, and wizards. So we would not want a card like Braga, as he furthers none of these themes and hits at something that we aren't trying to support. For a more advanced cube, we may want him because he opens a path for experienced players to create something from nothing. But since this is just starting out playtesting, we should keep confusion to a minimum. Azorius is a good starting point, as each archetype has a lot of individual cards that work well with their specified theme. Sadly, there is little overlap. Malcator is a wizard that makes artifacts, which supports both themes, but he clearly goes more in an artifact deck. This means Azorius is kind of split into 3 sections, 1 for each archetype. Damir's biggest snag is its weird and strange lack of elves that no one could have seen coming, something we could fix with a few creature type edits and lore changes. Other than that, it's not difficult to find cards that fit into their archetypes. Rakdos has a lot of fairly easy slot-ins, though we want to be careful with the spells we put in the colors, because while it has many stellar removal spells, we want the pairing to show it can do many things with spells. Otherwise, it will be constantly drowning drafters with premium removal. Gruul has a great synergy of the tokens archetype and sacrifice. This makes it easy to work through the combination of colors. Selesnya has a good balance of everything. Since humans are such an evergreen creature type, it's easy to lattice the archetypes together. I want to bring attention to the card Torrens, who is a valuable asset because he is a human, makes tokens, and counters. This card is something we want to find in every color pairing. It's these types of cards that are the glue that hold the cube together. Orzhov is light on artifacts, but the color pairing is really straightforward due to having 2 very common tribal archetypes. Izzet, Golgari, and Simic play out much like Selesnya, being really easy pairings to cobble together. Boros is almost as easy. Its biggest stumble is the lack of vampires, something we can fix with a couple of creature type edits. For mono-colored cards, we want a good mix of cards for each of the on-color archetypes, and a couple of cards that are generally good, ideally that help push the multicolor theme. These are easy to fill out with hundreds of replacements, so we will not be going over every color, as there are a lot of different possible combinations we could end with. For lands, we've added Tri-lands, Shocks, Fetches, and Duels as a good base of mana. We've also added a slew of 5-color lands. The addition of Scrylands is good, as the format will likely be a little slower with a lot of multicolor cards costing 3 or more mana. They also help smooth out rocky draws. Triomes have been cautiously added to the cube. Generally, I am opposed to Triomes as they make mana too easy to manipulate. Since this is a multicolor cube though, we might at least try them to see if they overreach. We then have the other category. This is where we put cards that don't fit the framework, like artifacts or 5-color cards. I've put in this section a bunch of artifact and 5-color cards that synergize with multicolor cards, as well as a few extra 4-color cards that fit with the archetypes. This fills out the list nicely. We now have a prototype for this cube. From here, we need to playtest and improve on design elements. I have a planned session to playtest this cube with my friends in a couple of weeks, so we can't expand upon designing this cube at the moment. We will, however, create a follow-up video later to talk about iterative design. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. The video was a bit of a weird one. I got almost done with making it, and then I realized I want to do something else entirely with the cube. But in the middle of moving, I wasn't really able to change the work I had essentially already completed. So look forward to both part 2 of this tricolor themed cube and the multicolor True Madness cube coming in the future, where I like kind of lean more into everybody just playing as many colors as they can all the time. I look forward to seeing the feedback on this video in the comments, especially with so many like fake and edited cards. If you want to see the full list, it is in the description, so go ahead and just click on the Cube Cobra link and it should take you to Multicolor Madness Cube, and the cards that are changed are highlighted so you can read them all. I would also like to thank my patrons at Patreon, especially Thunderbird 145. They get to vote for what the next video will be, and they help me out a lot. Again, thanks for watching, everybody, and have a wonderful night or day. I guess people don't just wake up at 3 p.m. like I do.